Ranking Member Bera from California for your 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and my apologies, I had to step out, so if this is ground that's already been covered. Maybe it's a question for Mr. Ross. Getting an assessment of where the conflict is right now, there have been times where the various ethnic resistance groups have made progress. It does seem like it's either at a stalemate or perhaps they've lost some of that progress as China has kind of changed. Could you give us a assessment of what you see on the ground?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I don't like the term stalemate for the conflict in Myanmar. It is a very dynamic conflict, and it's constantly changing. Over the last 2 years, the resistance and ethnic armed groups have made significant territorial gains since the launch of Operation 1027 in Shan State, in Kachin State in the north near the border with China, in the southeast in Karen, in the west in Rakhine State, as well as in the center in some Bamar majority regions. Some of those gains have been rolled back a bit in the last year as China has swung behind the military and put significant pressure on ethnic armed groups, particularly those on the China-Myanmar border, that have pressed them into bilateral ceasefire agreements, which have then allowed the Myanmar military to redeploy resources and arms against other armed actors. So that has shifted the momentum somewhat over the last year, but the military has only been able to retake small parts of the land that it has lost, and there are significant parts of the country that it does not control, and that will be reflected in where elections can and cannot be held when they start next month.
And can I get your assessment on cooperation amongst the various ethnic resistance groups? Are they working well together? Are they fighting with each other?
Yeah, it varies around the country. I would say that Operation 1027, again, was a sort of critical moment because it demonstrated a really unprecedented degree of collaboration between ethnic armed groups and Burmese resistance actors. Prior to that, some of the most important ethnic armed groups had not sat on the sidelines, but had limited their engagement to training and support. Once they entered the fight in October of 2023, there was much more operational collaboration. Some of that is at risk, though. China has put significant pressure on ethnic armed groups not to collaborate among themselves and with Burmese resistance actors, because that is seen as a significant threat to the regime in Naypyidaw, which has over decades pursued a divide and rule approach that has sought to split communities from one another, and China has aided and abetted that over the last year.
Right. And then just in the last few minutes I have to Ambassador Currie or to you, Mr. Ross, how can we best engage and support the ASEAN nations in this? And then what would you like Congress to do to support the resistant groups outside of what you've already covered in terms of sanctions and secondary sanctions?
Thank you for the question, sir. I think that as far as supporting the resistance groups, there is plenty of legislation already on the books that would allow the administration to do so. There are multiple problems, one being that the regional bureau that is now responsible for assistance to Burma is not well suited to be implementing programs in this kind of conflict. Also, because Burma is one of these seam issues, it's a problem both in the South Central Asia Bureau and the East Asia Pacific Bureau, as evidenced by this hearing today. But those bureaus are not working together to address the problem. In fact, EAP feels very proprietary about Burma and tends to block out SCA Bureau from dealing with it, even though they are hosting 1.3 million refugees and are downstream of a lot of the consequences, and India plays a very important role here too. So there's a need. I think the special coordinator or special, if any situation cries out for some kind of special envoy, it is Burma. And so pushing the administration to appoint someone who can look at the problem holistically and recommend programs, recommend policy, really take ownership in a way, and it needs to be a senior level person. Right now, the person handling Burma is a DAS.
What would you recommend us with the ASEAN nations in Southeast Asia? What would you want us to push them to do?
Again, you need someone like this, a senior level diplomat who can focus on Burma, who can go to the ASEAN ministerial materials and meet with the ambassadors here in town solely to talk about the issue of Burma, because it's like number 7 on the list of priorities for EAP and ECA.
So
I'm sorry,
asking for a
SE.
special envoy would be something that you'd recommend Congress push for?
Continually, yes.
Great. Thank you very much.